Hello everybody, my name is Marty, short for Smarty Reads, and welcome back. Today I'm going to read Chapter 6 of Step 4 Mallory. It's called Teacher Trouble. Before we begin, make sure you like this video, subscribe and turn on your post notifications so you know when I upload a new video. Also, share this video with your friends and family so they can watch me read as well. Other than that, let's begin. Teacher Trouble. Finally, the day we've all been waiting for, says Mr. Knight. After lunch, we're going to read our poems about famous Americans. I wouldn't exactly say this is the day I've been waiting for, but now that it's here, I'm glad. I spent the whole week trying to figure out which famous American I wanted to write about, and I couldn't think of anyone until last night. I thought of my famous American at the dinner table. Mallory, you're awfully quiet, Mom said to me while we were eating. Would you like some more of something? I poked at the pile of mashed potatoes on my table. I don't need more dinner, I told Mom. What I need is to think of someone to write my famous American poem about. Max laughed. You've been thinking about that all week. Just write about somebody famous. The trouble is figuring out who, I told Max. Max rolled his eyes. If I had to write a poem like that, I'd write it about my baseball coach. I'd say, Coach Tom, you're very famous because you're always winning. But you'd be lots more famous if you played me every inning. When Max said that, Dad laughed. It seemed like Dad liked Max's idea, and that gave me an idea. May I please be excused? I asked Mom. No dessert? She asked. I shook my head no. No time for dessert, I told Mom. I ran back to my room and started writing. Before Mom came in to check on me before bed, I was still writing. Just a few minutes, I begged. Mom said she wasn't too happy that I was staying up so late to do my homework, but I told her that I really wanted to do a good job on my poem. That was last night. This morning, all I have to do is get through math and science. Then after lunch, we get to read our poems. While I'm busy thinking about what I wrote, Mary Ann pokes me in the side. There's to Mallory. So, what are you going to tell me? Are you going to tell me who you wrote about? I shake my head no and look down at the sheet of paper. With the poem on it that's sticking out of my notebook. Mary Ann is already asking 3 times what I wrote about, but I'm not telling her or anybody else. I want what I wrote to be a surprise, especially for Mr. Knight. I haven't gotten off to a great start with my teacher, but once he hears my poem, I'm hoping all of that will change. I'm hoping that when he hears my poem, he'll like it so much he'll decide to do something, like give me a special award. And then at the top, there's Mallory wearing a sash and holding a cup and a can that says Best Student. The sash. Class, please open your science book, says Mr. Knight. I make myself stop thinking about my award. I carefully slide my notebook into my desk and take out my science book. Even though rock formations are not my favorite topic, I pay close attention while we're reading about them. I don't want to do anything today to get on Mr. Knight's bad side. At lunch, everyone is talking about their poems. I picked George Washington, father of our country, says Emma. I picked Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon, says Joey. I picked Abraham Lincoln, the president who freed the slaves, says Zelo. I picked Betsy Ross, designer of our flag, says Mary Ann. Mallory, who did you pick? Asks Emma. I pick at my pasta. It's a surprise, I tell everyone. A surprise? I love surprises, says April. Mallory, as your best friend, you have to tell me, says Mary Ann. You can tell us, says Ariel and Danielle. If I promise not to tell anyone else, will you tell me, asks Zelo. But I shake my head no. I'm not going to tell Mary Ann. I'm definitely not telling Ariel and Danielle. And even though part of me would like to tell Zelo, I don't. I want everyone to be surprised when they hear who I wrote about. When the bell rings, Pamela looks at me like she's curious to hear who I wrote about too. I'm sure your poem will be good, she says as we walk to our classroom. Excuse me. I hope everyone, especially Mr. Knight, will think that it is. Class, please take your seats, says Mr. Knight as we enter room 404. Let's get started on our poems. Joey, you're first today. Joey stands up and starts reading his poem. Neil Armstrong was born in Ohio. The moon was where he wanted to go. He was an astronaut, strong and proud. His rocket must have been real loud. He was the first man to walk on the moon, which made him whistle a happy tune. When Mr. Knight claps when Joey is done and marks a mark in his grade book. Excellent job, says Mr. Knight. Then he calls on Carlos. Carlos reads his poem about Abraham Lincoln. After CeeLo, Ariel reads a poem about Helen Keller. Then Pete reads a poem about Martin Luther King Jr. After each poem, Mr. Knight smiles, makes a grade mark in his grade book, and says something nice about what each person wrote. After each poem, I feel like I need a bottle of glue to keep me in my seat. I can hardly wait to stand up and read what I wrote. Marianne, it's your turn, says Mr. Knight. Marianne stands up and smiles. I wrote about Betsy Ross, she tells the class. Betsy Ross was born in 1752. Sewing was what she liked to do. She was a lady who sewed our country's flag. If she had not, we might be flying a bag. Stars and stripes became the official design. If you ask me, our flag looks super fine. Mr. Knight smiles when Marianne is done. I certainly agree with the hard work showing part. He says, Mallory, you're next. When Mr. Knight calls on me, everyone looks at me like they can't wait to hear who I wrote about. Even though my famous American is different from all the other famous Americans, I can't wait to read my poem. I stand up, smile at Mr. Knight, and start. My famous American is Mr. Knight. Your name sounds dark, but you are bright. You've taught 4th grade for 20 years. When it comes to kids, you have no fears. Each day you teach us something new. There's no other American as famous as you. When I finish reading, I look at Mr. Knight. I want him to say, Mallory, that was the best poem I've ever heard. I didn't know I was a famous American, but I feel like one now. You get the Best Student Award. But when I look at Mr. Knight, he's not smiling. And you get the Best Student Award is not what he says. Class, we're going to take a short break. I'd like you to sit quietly at your desks. Mallory, I'd like to see you outside, please. The classroom fills with whispers and giggles as they follow Mr. Knight outside. Something tells me he doesn't want to see me outside to give an award. Mr. Knight looks like he's not quite sure where to begin. Mallory, I appreciate that you wrote a poem about me. It was a nice poem, but I gave an assignment to write about a poem about a famous American, not about me. At the top there's Mallory and Mr. Knight. Mr. Knight clears his throat like he has more to say. Mallory, my classroom rule number 5 is to think before you act. I'm not sure why you wrote a poem about me and not about a famous American, but what I am sure about is that you did not think about what you did before you did it. Mr. Knight looks at me like he's waiting for some kind of explanation. I look down at my shoes. I did think about what I did before I did it. I thought about it for a whole week. I thought for sure Mr. Knight would like my poem I wrote about him. Now I feel like if I tried to explain it to him why I wrote it, he wouldn't understand. I'm sorry I didn't do the assignment, I say. Apology accepted, said Mr. Knight. But he gives me an I hope there's nothing else you're going to need to apologize for look. As we walk back to the classroom, I think about last year and this year. Last year, I got along great with my teacher, Mrs. Daly. This year, it seems like all I'm having are problems when it comes to Mr. Knight. I think about a saying that Mrs. Daly taught us in 3rd grade. She said that when two things are really different, you can say they are as different as day and night. If you ask me, 3rd grade with Mrs. Daly and 4th grade with Mr. Knight are as different as day and night. And so far, I'm not sure I like the difference. That's the end of that chapter. I'll see you next time when I read Weekend Worries. Bye, everyone.